friends, it's Kenzie from the Sewing Palace. We are located in Helena, Montana. And today, I am here for another quilting tips, tricks, and techniques video. Today's quilting technique, we are going to go over foundation paper piecing. We're going to use these 6-inch finished Scrappy Triangles. You can make a bunch of half square triangles. There's 50 papers in here that you can use to make anything that you like. Today, I made this. It's a zigzag pattern and I used 36 of these blocks in this little wall hanging. It's about 36 by 36. With foundation paper piecing, you can get really nice crisp points and different and tricky angles that you wouldn't be able to do with traditional paper piecing. Or traditional piecing where it's all squares, triangles, and rectangles for the most part. One of my favorite things about foundation papers piecing is you can create animals and cool landscapes. If you were to do a beautiful landscape of the water and trees, you can get a really realistic look from that. So once you learn the technique of how to do foundation paper piecing, you can do anything that you set your mind to. So let's get started into making a couple blocks, learning how to make foundation paper piecing. Gather up your supplies. Scrappy Triangles 6-inch finished blocks. In here there are 50 papers that you can easily rip out and stitch right on. All different designs. Best press, fabric glue, temporary, it's iron adhesive and water erasable. An add a quarter ruler. I like this one because it's skinny on one side and the big bump for the seam on the other. A seam ripper. This one is nice because it has a magnifying glass as well as there's a light so you can see what you're seam ripping. Super nice. Next you'll need a 1/4-inch foot and pull 10 to 12 fat quarter or 1/4-inch fabrics out of your stash, and then some background. Feel free to look through the papers. There are some real complex ones as well as there's some easy ones. The different numbers on the paper show you how many fabrics you will need or how many seams there are. Go ahead and pull out a couple ones that you want to start on. You can start on some easy ones or you can pull a complex one to stitch out. It doesn't really change how you stitch. Your first step is to pre-crease all of the black solid lines. So I'm going to start by doing the long one, using my fingernail to point downward and guide it along the add a quarter plus ruler, the skinnier side. Then I'm going to fold it and pre-crease it better. Do it to the remaining solid black lines so they are nice and folded crisply because you will be turning the fabric back and forth. Next, grab your background pieces. This is an 8-inch square that we're going to cut in half diagonally once. So that way we're creating the half square triangle piece for the background. You can choose your stash or you can use the same fabric. Each 8-inch square will yield you 2 half square triangle background pieces. Set those aside. Let's gather up our fabrics. For this block, you'll need 4 fabrics. I'm going to choose a dark and then a medium or light fabric. Then decide which order you'd like it in. There. I'm going to start by prepping fabric 3 because it is super big. It's a full fat quarter size, and I'm only going to put it in fabric 3 spot. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so I'm not dealing with so much fabric. I'm going to start by folding it in half so it's longer than it is wider and skinny. So folding it in half, grabbing a ruler to cut a strip off that is 4.5 inches wide. 4 to 5, I'd say, is pretty good. Setting the rest to the side, I'm going to use that 5-inch strip for this block. Decide which order you'd like it in. Lay them out so you can plan for it. And we're going to start with fabric 1. One of the cool things with this is you're actually going to see the fabric right side up on the wrong side of the paper. And the paper numbered is the back of the project. That is one of the important things to think about when you are on this, when you're doing foundation papers, is you're sewing backwards. The side that has fabric 1 will go down first. I'm going to have a little bit of the fabric peeking out, and I'm going to cut the extra off, so I'm not dealing with so much fabric. Grab some glue. It will help hold the fabric to the paper temporarily. Glue the side, that is the side that their 1 is on the opposite side. Gluing, making sure that you have a little bit of extra. Where the fold is, you need to make sure that you have at least 1/4 inch. Now grab your fabric 2. This is the important part. Right sides together, line up the seam, cutting off the extra just to keep my fabrics neat and nice. Grab your quarter ruler, your add a quarter ruler. There is a little lip and it will lock into place, giving you that perfect 1/4 inch seam, and cut off the extra. Now you're going to stitch that seam, so you have to fold back the paper and stitch between fabric 1 and fabric 2. So go to your machine. The first important step is to make your stitch length smaller. Set it to 2 millimeters or 1.9 millimeter length. The most important thing is when you are paper piecing, your stitch length needs to be smaller so that way you have more needle strikes through the fabric. Start about 1/4 inch down the seam, that way you can reverse backward to where the fabric begins and stitch down, following the line. Don't forget to backstitch at the end. I'll let you play this again so you can see it. Flip the fabric over, add some glue, that way it'll stick to the paper, give the seam a good press. Next we're on to fabric 3. Fold over the paper to use your add a quarter ruler to trim off the extra. Grab your fabric 3. I'm going to cut a little piece off from the big section of fabric, lining up the edge of the fabric, and then once again stitch on the line. Just like we did before, make sure that you have your fabrics right sides together. Start about 1/4 inch down the line, back up, reverse to that other seam, and then continue stitching down the black line. Backstitch at the end and use your thread cutter. Fold the fabric over so you're on the wrong side of the paper, add your glue, flip your fabric, press the seam, add a 1/4 ruler, trim away the extra, grab your background piece, center it, fold back the fabric and stitch on the black line. Press the seam, make it nice and crisp. Now we're time to take the paper out. If you fold the paper over itself, it will rip just like you're ripping something out of your checkbook. Use your seam ripper to clean up any extra small pieces of fabric. Now it's time to square up your fabric. Line up that 45-degree angle and trim down your block to 6.5. Follow along while I make the next block. First step, pre-crease the entire block, all of the solid black lines. Decide which fabric you want where. This fabric here is my fabric number 1, cutting away the extra. The light teal is all of my 2, 3, 4, and 5 fabrics. Making sure that all the fabrics are right sides together while I'm stitching, pre-creasing, adding glue if you need, trimming away the extra, and going all the way around, creating a square in a square unit with the paper. Stitching around, trimming away the extra, using the add a 1/4 ruler as I go along. I don't press it with an iron each time except now when I am all done. Now I'm going to add my fabric 6. Trim away the extra, decide what your fabric 6 is, making a little about 4.5 inch strip so I'm dealing with less fabric. Line up the edge of the fabric, fold back the paper and stitch on the black line. Repeating the same process for fabric 7. Anything that you trim off from the add a 1/4 ruler, if it's big enough to where you can save it, save it. If it's too small, throw it away. Last seam by adding the background, giving it a good press. Now I'm planning tearing away the paper. If you tear the paper before you trim it down, you won't have to deal through the paper when you're sewing the block together. Using my seam ripper to get those tricky pieces of the paper out. Now let's trim it up. Trim the block to 6.5 square using the center point of 3.25 and the 45-degree angle. I made 4 blocks here. That way I can show you how you can turn the blocks. You can put the blocks in all of the same direction. Turn a couple of the blocks to make a pinwheel. Turn them again to create a cool hourglass block. Make it where you can see a square and a square. Or how about half square triangles? Flying geese block. I personally like this look, so I'm going to turn them so they're all in the same direction. Fold your pieces right sides together and seam the 1/4 inch. Just like you normally would. Time to press the seam. Make sure that you press the seams in different directions so you can nest the center seam. Nesting the center seam will cause it so that way you get nice points. Press the final seam nice and flat. If you need to open the center seam, go ahead. If not, just press it in a way that is comfortable for you. I like to press from both sides, and I'm going to use some best press to make sure it's nice and crisp. Thanks for joining me today for today's quilting technique project. Now don't forget that you still have to quilt it and bind it. I had leftover fabric, so I used the leftover of my back quarters to turn it into a scrappy backing, as well as I just couldn't get over all the color in this quilt, so I made a binding with a little flange, and I actually put piping in there. So if you are interested in learning how to do that, I can create a video for that as well. But this is 36 by 36. I made 36 squares to make this project, and it is cute, wonderful, perfect for a wall hanging that I'm going to display in my house up on the wall. Super cute. And that's it for today for the project of Scrappy Triangles and learning how to use paper to sew on your quilts.